During the Economic Forum in Davos, the managing director of the International Monetary Fund, Kristalina Georgieva, said that regardless of the war in Ukraine, she does not expect a recession in the world's largest economies, but she cannot exclude it either.
So my answer is going to be no, not at this point. It doesn't mean it is out of question. We have downgraded our projections for growth for this year in April for 143 countries. This is 86% of global GDP. And since then, in a short period of time, a little bit like the weather here in Davos, the horizon has darkened.
There are many headwinds to the global economy. The war could escalate. You could have sanctions and counter-sanctions. We have central bankers around the world tightening monetary policy. Financial conditions could tighten much more rapidly than we've already seen. And growth in China is slowing. So all of these pose downside risks to our forecast. So again, globally, I would say at 3.6%, there is a buffer. At the same time, there are countries that are getting hit hard. I mean, countries in Europe that are getting hit hard by the war, where we could certainly see technical recessions.
In turn, the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, on behalf of the community, declared the continuation of aid to Ukraine.
Ukraine must win this war. And Putin's aggression must be a strategic failure. So we will do everything we can to help Ukrainians prevail and retake the future into their hands. For the first time in history, the European Union is providing military aid to a country under attack. We are mobilizing our full economic power. Our sanctions and the self-sanctionings of companies themselves are draining Russia's economy and thus draining the Kremlin's war machine.
NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg noted that close cooperation between the North Atlantic Alliance and the European Union is of key importance for the response to the war in Ukraine. That is why it is so important to expand NATO's borders.
We welcome the fact that Finland and Sweden have applied for NATO membership. I'm confident that we will be able to address the concerns that have been expressed, and that we will be able then to welcome Finland and Sweden as members of our alliance.
The Pentagon informed about further aid for Ukraine. Countries such as Poland, Italy, Denmark, Greece, and Norway announced new aid packages in the field of security.
Russia's unprovoked and cruel invasion has galvanized countries from around the world. And the bravery, the skill, and the grit of the Ukrainian people have inspired people everywhere. Now, we've made important progress since the contact group was established after the Ramstein summit last month. And today, together with Minister Reznikov and his team.
In turn, in Tokyo, there was a meeting of the Quad Group, also known as the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue. The informal alliance of the United States, Japan, India, and Australia has great potential to act in maintaining security and stability in Asia. Joe Biden used this opportunity to draw attention to the urgent issue of the war in Ukraine.
At the same time, we're navigating a dark hour in our shared history. The Russian brutal and unprovoked war against Ukraine has triggered a humanitarian catastrophe, and innocent civilians have killed in the streets, and millions of refugees are internally displaced as well as exiled. And this is more than just a European issue. It's a global issue.
According to UN experts, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which is one of the world's most important grain exporters, will aggravate the pre-war food crisis.
For Ukraine, I was already out there with a clarion call that we've got a world food crisis, and we're facing the worst humanitarian crisis since World War II. Just when you think it couldn't get any worse over a year ago, you had Ethiopia, then you had Afghanistan, and then the breadbasket of the world. This now got the longest bread lines of the world. And so now, because of this crisis, we're taking food from the hungry to give to the starving. It's absolutely a crisis mode. What do you think is going to happen when you take a nation that normally grows enough food to feed 400 million people and you sideline that? What do you think is going to happen? And so you add the fuel costs, food costs, shipping costs. It's devastating to not just our operations, but to global food security.
The war in Ukraine has an impact on the climate crisis, which has been at the top of the list of the most important and urgent challenges faced by Western countries for years. In the face of war and the tragedy of millions of people, this issue had to take a back seat.